So what the approach that I've put together over the years, and feel free to use this or to think about this and use whichever pieces you like, is I've got what I call a culture of privacy. And that's not really culture in the way that most people talk about culture, which is kind of a little bit touchy-feely and really about how people think about privacy in the organization. Where I started when I was thinking about this and building privacy programs was, what are all of the things, if I have a set of personal information, what are all the things that would stop me doing exactly what I want with it? So if I have your information and I want to send you a marketing email, for example, what would stop me doing that, or what would control that? And the obvious place to start is to say, well, there are legal requirements as to why I can't do the things that I maybe want to do. Why I can't go and collect your children's biometrics and then turn that around and use that to sell them candy, right? There are some legal requirements that put some restrictions on that. But those aren't the only kinds of restrictions that organizations have around their data. And that's where I started building out the rest of this model and saying, well, it's not just those direct laws you have to worry about. Particularly if you're a data processor organization, you have a lot of contracts that you need to be thinking about as well. And in my experience, a lot of organizations will spend a lot of time and effort negotiating all of the right terms in their contracts, then they will sign them, then they will put them on a shelf. But really, those contracts often have some requirements that are ongoing in your organization, and needing to manage against those and make sure that if one of your major clients comes in and says, we want to do an audit of how you're complying with our contract, which is one of the things that I've done in previous lives, you want to make sure that, again, you've got a good story, you know what the contract says, and you're doing all of the right things to comply with those contracts. So those two pieces I think of as the must do, right? Those are the things you have legally agreed or you're legally bound to go and do as part of your organization. And those often get covered by the privacy program. The other pieces, I think of the other three pieces of the wheel are more of the things that you should be doing, or the things that you can be doing, but may not be front of mind for privacy programs. So really with ethical considerations, how are you really doing the right thing? And if I go back to what I was saying about the FTC with the unfair and deceptive trade practices, what are those things that you can build into the way that you use personal information that you can say, look, ethically as an organization, we never want to be unfair. We never want to be deceptive. What are those controls we can put in place? How do we build them? How do we implement them? How do we manage those? You can also think about requests from customers or things you're doing, again, that you don't have to, but really would help your organization show your customers that you're not just doing the minimum standard, but you're really listening to their feedback and trying to build products and services in a way that takes their concerns and their requirements into account as well. And then the last piece here is strategic, where to me, that's all of those things that you're going to do as an organization where, again, you don't have to, but strategically, maybe you're trying to say, we want to do these things because we want to show that we're really taking privacy seriously. Let's say, with a good example would be with the California law that came out last year, it gave certain rights to residents of California. But what if you wanted to say, we've built the system, we can actually extend those rights to any resident of the United States? Well, where do you get to take credit for that in a traditional privacy program? So that's what I'm thinking about. If you're looking at your program, take all of these factors into account and then think about the program that's right for your organization. So that the way that I see this driving things is that really, if you can agree with other executives across the organization that you really have, we're going to get a shared vision around these different areas as to how do we want to build our privacy program? Do we want to go above and beyond? Do we want to focus on just legal compliance? Once we get that shared alignment around the vision, it's then easier to go to the people that you're going to need to make this work in other parts of the organization and say, hey, your executives have agreed that this is going to be a priority for this year. Let's work together to make that happen. And then it also increases the privacy program's ability to execute on this because you're all kind of working towards the shared goal. It's not that privacy is trying to stop innovation, but you're building all of these things together in a way that organizations can meet their other goals at the same time as doing privacy well. So another way to think about this and kind of where should I start and prioritize is that you can think about parts of your privacy program externally visible outside of your organization. And then there's a lot of things that really, whether you do them or not, no one's ever going to know until something bad happens. So my guidance would be, don't wait till the last minute to get these things right that are externally facing. Things like your privacy notice that I mentioned before, handling data subject rights if you're subject to those, making sure that when people ask you questions about privacy or have complaints, that you're following up in a timely manner, and you're not leaving those complaints hanging, because a lot of those complaints then become escalated to regulators and you can get in a lot of trouble that way. I have a scenario at the moment actually where someone has shared my email address without my permission, and I've reached out to the company a couple of times and I've said to them, if you don't answer, I'm probably going to have to go to the FTC at some point to try and actually escalate this. But so that's an easy way. If you have good complaint handling practices, a lot of these things that could get worse, you can still handle them when they're relatively easy to solve for.